At Whole Foods, I'm known as Eileen Webster because I've been Eileen Webster for the 10 years or more that I've worked in the Andover store. About 2 years ago, I remarried, so I'm Eileen Haggerty, but no one at work knows me as that, so, it's Eileen. Welcome to everybody, and thanks for coming. As I mentioned, I've worked for Whole Foods for over 10 years. I think it's probably my third career, but that's how life goes, right? And you are all probably a little closer to our newer store now in Westford. Lisa mentioned in the introduction that my title is the Healthy Eating Specialist. It used to be, that isn't incorrect, however, and this is not due to Amazon, there have been many changes at Whole Foods, and there always will be. And one of them is that my role has changed many times. And every store used to have someone in that role, and unfortunately that's sort of not the case now. But since I'm still hanging in there as part of the woodwork in Andover, I still get to function in that role at times. And it's a real pleasure because it's something I'm very passionate about. The other jobs I do there is culinary demos, and I even now work for part of our prepared food. So I prepare specialty meals once a week, give customers a little extra something to try and eat. So ever evolving. Also, I do store tours, which kind of are along the lines of a healthy eating store tour. So that's free if any of you ever want to take advantage of that with just another friend to go a little more in depth to questions you might have, or with a group you might participate in. I do that upon request, and my card with my email is right there, so you can take that when we're done if that's of interest to you. Pardon me. I am not sick, but I was blessed with that lovely one of the viruses that was going around weeks and weeks ago, so every now and then I will have a little cough. I apologize. It's nothing contagious. So welcome. So it's a new year, and it often seems that in that time of year people get a little more interested in considering the food choices that are around us and available to us all the time. But it's something that I think is worth thinking about pretty regularly. I don't know what questions you come to this workshop with tonight, but I'm happy and would love to address as many as I can. I have been passionate on my own and then through work in learning about food's impact on our body for a long time. And I recognize, and I'm curious if you agree with me, that even with the best of intentions, as we read a lot of information, and maybe a year or so later we read new information that completely conflicts the information we thought we were being so good about doing and following. It happens so often that at some point, we're humans and we kind of go, I give up. I'm just going to eat whatever I want. This is all nonsense. It doesn't make a difference. And I totally get that. And at the same time, we will argue that it makes a huge difference. But maybe we don't have to make it as complicated as it sometimes can seem. Healthy eating. What does that mean to anyone here? Just like what first comes to your mind when I say like the workshop on healthy eating? Anyone?
Vegetables.
Vegetables? Yes?
Fruits and vegetables.
Fruits and vegetables?
Balance.
Balance. Cut out the sugar. All right, good, we're done. Thanks for coming. And yes, anything else?
Whole grains.
Whole grains?
Non-processed.
Non-processed, absolutely. So I agree with all of those things. And they are descriptions of components of what would be considered a healthy diet. The word I have arrived at that I really like to use when I talk about food is nourishing, because that really starts to take us from the food itself and move it into where we think about how it actually impacts our bodies and how our body functions and how we feel every day. So I really like to think about whether foods are nourishing us or in a way depleting us, because indeed certain foods do that, and many foods do both, right? So back to whomever said balance, obviously yes, it's a balance of those two. Now, a number of years ago, this handout that I will pass out to you was produced by Whole Foods through a group of doctors that worked together, and anyway, it became sort of this. We had a program that doesn't technically exist any longer, but it was called Health Starts Here. And it was to provide information and call out products and recipes that fit that criteria. And the criteria as you'll see, can be rather strict. We'll just pass it back. But I still like to use this diagram to make some points that are significant, I think. And again, actually, for the first time, I should say, my focus and my hope is that I will help everyone in this room to uncomplicate what can become a very complicated and frustrating process, particularly the more you try to educate yourself about food and nutrition. It can be very interesting to some people. It can be very frustrating for others. And in the busy world we're all in, I feel strongly that it's great to have a way to just make a quick sort of the choices that you're making, help you to figure out if they're the best ones to really nourish you. So that's my goal. Okay, so most of you have this, but I can kind of hold it up. If you just look at this plate, and of course there's been lots of plates and pyramids and all sorts of things that have been given to us over the last number of years as diagrams or explanations as to the way we should eat. I don't like the word should either, but maybe we'll get back to that. What's the biggest message you see on this plate that you're looking at? Vegetables. So it is really very accurate that in the course of a day, just about half of what we eat should be vegetables. Now, that's leaving out what? You know, we always say fruits and vegetables. I would definitely say vegetables and fruits, and vegetables are the primary focus. And you can stretch that over into plant foods, which you hear a lot about these days. But vegetables, the majority of us, and this is just a general sweeping statement, but we can push in more vegetables of every kind. And that's also an important word is, what can we push into our diet that's nourishing and will help us, rather than thinking always of things that we have to eliminate and sort of deprive ourselves of. Sometimes, the way we approach things, we're kind of setting ourselves up for failure in making changes. So thinking about pushing in the good, when we push into our diet more nutrient-dense, things that calorie for calorie are just giving our body so much more to go on. When we push those in, we don't crave as much of the stuff that is really not as nutrient dense and that really it isn't really nourishing us. So think more about pushing in the good stuff. So here, the clear message is we can all increase the vegetables. On that note, I'll just point out one category of vegetable, and they all bring us a whole plethora of nutrients you've heard of: vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, antioxidants, all these important things. So they all have their benefits. However, one category still seems to be the one that many people are a little less familiar with, and that's the category of dark green leafy vegetables beyond spinach. So how many people, I know we've all heard kale to the point of, but I am still going to make you a salad with it. But dark green leafy vegetables are still they are the most nutrient-dense vegetable out there, but probably one of the fewer consumed. And sometimes it's just because we're not familiar with what the best way to use them are. So tonight I'm going to be making a kale, carrot, avocado salad for you. And someone's probably going to have to remind me to start doing that at some point to talk while I'm doing it, so you will have a chance to eat it. I love this recipe, and I have a copy for you, because everything in it is a whole food, with the exception of a little tamari. And that's very important too, and I'm going to come back to that. But back to the greens. Very nutrient dense, so great to incorporate more into your diet. I don't know, obviously I've spoken about kale, so kale. Anyone like kale? Oh, good. There's a lot of types. There's green, there's red, and there's lacinato, dinosaur, or Tuscan kale. It has 3 names. Excuse me. Swiss chard, a little closer to spinach in its taste profile. There's a whole bunch of them. And the other one I brought, though, just because some people are like, really? Anyone know what these are?
Dandelion green.
Yeah, dandelion greens. Yeah. These are very nutrient dense. They're really good for your liver. And they're great to just chop up and add to a salad. Kick up the nutrient density a little bit. Try them. They're a great bitter green. Another sort of sleeper green, we didn't have any, so I couldn't bring it, but is watercress. High in omega-3s, very nutrient dense, really yummy. Again, a great green to incorporate into a salad. So something to just play around with. So there's a lot. Collard greens are another great green. I mean, any of them, all of them are. Just don't get stuck in the spinach. Okay, branch out and push them in. And you can toss them into anything. Yes?
Can you eat all of those uncooked?
Can you eat all of the greens uncooked? Yes. Nothing will happen to you. And today's salad is raw, but you don't have to eat raw. And like I personally, I don't know why, it's just me. I don't like salads a lot. I eat salads, but I could not have a salad every single day. I love vegetables, but I just prefer them cooked. It's me, so go with what will be best for you. Like please don't do I'm on a diet, I'm having another salad. It's like, if it makes you miserable, there's a lot of other wonderful foods and wonderful ways to have them. So you can eat all of these raw. I don't know of any vegetable that you couldn't eat raw. You may not love it, but there's no danger in it. Any other questions so far? So back to greens and vegetables. And okay, so back to our plate. So vegetables, no question about it. Grains, I like to kind of qualify the picture on here. There's still a significant portion of this plate that is dedicated to whole grains. Another word you're going to hear recently about with whole grains are intact grains, which is just a better way to describe what indeed they are. When it comes to grains, I wouldn't say, if you're not having that many in your diet, to feel the need to increase that. But I would really encourage everyone, if you haven't already, to take a close look at any of the foods in your diet and ask yourself and read the ingredients. One, is this really a source of a whole grain or not? And if it's one that is not, can I make a switch to a better whole grain source with this particular food? And number two, please look at the list of ingredients. And I'll talk about why now. First of all, there's a lot of different pros and cons to whole grains and refined grains, right? So whole grain is just what it says, intact. Nothing's been changed. You may change it by the method of cooking, but that's not really going to change its nutrient density and what it gives us beneficially in terms of fiber, vitamins, and minerals. Refined grains, everything's been stripped away, right? But they taste so good, all that white stuff, right? So, it tastes so good because when we consume anything made with white or refined flours, our body basically, if I eat this English muffin, right, in my body and the way it digests and the impact it has on my blood sugar and how I'm feeling is no different than if I had this. It's sugar in our body. Because, why? Someone know? I don't have to say, does someone know why a white piece of bread or a bagel, it's a simple carbohydrate, but if you think about, yes, that's correct. It's a simple carbohydrate. But how much work do we have to do to digest this? Nothing, right? Pretty close to nothing. Versus an intact grain, and this is just, I brought this as an example because these are an English muffin, but they are made from 7 whole sprouted grains, which are intact and there's no refined flour in there. To break down and digest this versus this will take much longer. So we bring our blood sugar level up more steadily, as opposed to pretty much like a rocket. And we're getting a lot more nutrients in the consumption of the calories we're bringing in, right? So that's beneficial. But, so why do we care if our blood sugar shoots up and down?
It's unhealthy.
Yeah, it is unhealthy. Why?
Makes you hungry.
It definitely makes you hungry. Yes, so when we're eating, pardon me. Sorry, that's just that. So, first thing in the morning, you just wake up, and I don't know about you, when I was growing up, it was like, have some orange juice. So my blood sugar's here, I have orange juice, whee! And then I have a bowl of Rice Krispies, woo, because these are all processed puffed grains, sugar in the juice with no fiber. So our blood sugar's on a roller coaster. And when that happens, our blood sugar spikes up and comes down dramatically. Our body doesn't know any difference between that blood sugar spike and what you probably all know of as the fight or flight mechanism when our body is hardwired to react to an emergency. It doesn't know the difference. So our blood sugar is not intended to be on a roller coaster all day long. So every time it spikes up and down, our body pumps out stress hormones and slows metabolism and stores fat. It's our fight or flight survival mechanism. That's okay, once a week when you're driving in the car and the person in front of you stops short and you go, shoo, and you feel your heart flutter and your blood pressure goes up. That's the fight or flight. But if it's throughout the day, what that leads to is insulin resistance, chronic disease, and a whole host of other things. Plus, all the things that are doing this to us are not giving us the nutrients we need. They're not nourishing us. So that's the quick story as to why all this white stuff, refined grain products, don't really belong in our diet in a majority. There's room for everything. But the goal is that the majority of the foods we're eating throughout a day be as close to a whole food as possible, right? So this is the other very simple, unscientific message that I just really like to convey, that if you're wrestling with any form of a diet or a way of changing the way that you're eating, and it's just making you a little crazy and you're feeling frustrated, just stop, get a piece of paper, draw a line on it, and write down whole foods here, not the store, and processed foods here, and start to ask yourself the question, well, what I just ate, where does that fall on this continuum? Just had a bagel. Yeah, sorry. I just had a bowl of steel-cut oats. Where does that go? Yeah. I just had a glass of orange juice. Gave this away to you already. Yeah, I mean, it's just squeezed oranges, but it is much closer to a processed food because so much. No fiber, right, and a light, right. So how about let's see, well, a Yoplait strawberry yogurt. Thank you, I'm so good. Glad. What about a grass-fed plain yogurt by Stonyfield? It's a whole food. It's just because it's the whole milk cultured with some probiotics, so whole food. Big difference. Yogurt is a very, very tricky category. So many people are consuming it thinking, because yogurt's good for me. And I think listening to you know why yogurt is beneficial to us. What does yogurt have that our body benefits from? Probiotics. And any fermented food has probiotics. And every culture has a fermented food that's part of its culture. It's just sort of, it's not only was a way to preserve foods, but it creates that beneficial bacteria. And you could talk for a whole hour on that. Yes?
I generally eat the Stonyfield yogurt, but you're saying all yogurt has probiotics in it? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that all yogurt has probiotics. Yes, if it is a, yes.
They have to list it?
Oh yeah, I use Stonyfield as an example. It could be Market Basket plain yogurt. It could be Whole Foods yogurt. Yogurt is fermented milk, basically.
Really no better than
It depends. That gets more into do you want organic or not and other categories. So that's something that you can decide yourself. But all yogurt has probiotics. However, then when a yogurt, which is, many people believe is good, has then a ton of added sugar, God forbid high fructose corn syrup, artificial colors, artificial sweeteners, because now there's fewer calories, that's a bunch of junk food. And you're consuming all these things because you think probiotics are good for you, that's just not serving us well. It's not nourishing us. Yes?
What would you say about something like kombucha, which has a lot of sugar, but is advertised as being relatively good?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you asked that question about kombucha and consuming that as a probiotic source because I did mention orange juice, but everything I'm talking about when I say food, we tend to think about, exclude the liquids we consume. And truly, I think the best and only thing we need to drink is what's right here. Eat your food and drink water. All right? So That's why I used orange juice as an example. There's nothing inherently wrong with orange juice. You're going to get the vitamins and minerals, but it is a shot of sugar, even if no added sugar has been given to it. And that's not what our body is looking for. It's looking for a steady source of energy. And there's I mean, the calories alone and the sugars that many people are consuming throughout the day just from something that's in a cup or a bottle or whatever is crazy. Crazy. And many people are walking around, and Dunkin' Donuts knew this years ago. They would advertise right at that time of the day about your slump. I forget what they called it, because our circadian rhythm, we kind of slump a little in the afternoon anyway. But the factors that also impact that are, what did we have for lunch, and are we dehydrated? Many people are just dehydrated when they feel tired, and if they just stop and have a big glass of water and give it a minute or two, you'd realize, rather than going for the instant energy, we crave the sugar or the caffeine and the sugar. And oh my God, energy drinks, please don't even get near those. But so really, 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 we only, need to consume water. Yeah, wine and beer maybe. But kombucha, there's nothing wrong with kombucha. And it is a source of probiotics. And, it gives you a little flavor and a little bubbly. And so sometimes, sure, I just wouldn't say, I wouldn't pick kombucha as my personally would not pick it as my primary source of probiotics. Yeah, so good question, thank you, yes?
So on your charts there, where does whole grain English muffins fall?
Well, okay, so that's a good question. This brings us to what I mentioned before about A, is it a whole grain? B, if it's a product made with a grain, check at the list of ingredients because, first of all, no matter what a package says on it, I don't care if you're shopping at Whole Foods or CVS or the dollar store, or it doesn't matter. Kind of pay a little attention to what's on the outside of the package because that's all marketing. But if you really want to know what you're consuming, I personally feel, before you even look at the nutrition facts, of course they're important, look at the list of ingredients. That's going to tell you what you're really eating. When it comes to a whole grain product, it has to say whole wheat flour or whole barley or whatever the grain may be. Wheat flour is refined white flour because flour, well, generally I used to be able to say flour comes from wheat. Now we have all sorts of alternative flours that are gluten-free as an option to people who have that sensitivity. But a whole wheat muffin, I didn't bring those. Like we sell a whole wheat muffin. It would fall between these two because it is the whole grain, but it's still very refined. So it's not, you still get more nutrients than in the white, but not as many as something like this. I don't work for this company, but I probably should. I really love Ezekiel brand bread products. These are the only things I personally buy, but that's just me. You toast these, they're delicious. They come in the freezer section. This is really not an ad, it's just a passion. They come in the freezer section. You do not need to keep them frozen, but you do need to keep them in your refrigerator because there's no preservatives and they're whole grains and healthy fats are in whole grains and all sorts of things that can spoil more quickly. So I would put the white ones here, like this sprouted whole grain pretty close, wrong. White here, the sprouted whole grain here, and the whole wheat English muffin almost in the middle. Because more often than not, and this is the case for whole wheat bread as well, again, read ingredients because many times with your whole grain products, along with your whole grains, you're getting a number of sources of sugar. And sugar is sugar. It doesn't matter what the name is. In your body, our bodies, it reacts the exact same way and has the same effects, none of which are beneficial. So it doesn't matter if it says honey, molasses, barley malt, evaporated organic cane sugar. It doesn't matter what you call it. You don't buy a whole grain bread product in this case to then also consume sugar. At least I don't. So sugar is another thing we're going to get to in a minute. I'll start making the salad. All right. Well, we can come back to any questions about grains. Each of these categories we could talk for a very long time about. if you wanted to. So this smaller triangle has proteins in it. When it comes to proteins, I put in there, okay, I should back up and say, this Health Starts Here program was a very extreme. It excluded, if you might notice by looking a bit, dairy. There's no dairy here. That is, of course, a personal choice on many levels, whether you have a reaction to dairy, any number of things. I, though, would put dairy in this protein category. So in there, it would be high-quality dairy, high-quality meat, high-quality fish. And what do I mean by high quality? Anyone have a, pardon me?
Not allowed.
Oh, well, yeah. Farmed fish, in many cases, can be less than it's advertised to be. I just need a sip of water. Of all types. You have to know where your fish comes from. Yes, anyone else? Yes?
I understand that locally grass-fed meat is just as good as buying organic meat. Is that true?
Well, they're actually different.
Okay.
So organic means that the animal was, whether it be a fish, well, actually, no, take that back. There's no such thing as organic fish, sorry. Whether it be the chicken or the animal product, has been fed a completely organic diet. Okay, that's what it means. Grass-fed is literally that and you have to know that it's 100% grass-fed, because there can be grass-finished, where in the case of the obvious example is a cow. And for beef source, they can be grain-fed for a majority of their life and then be finished with grass at the end. Grass-fed means they've consumed grass their entire life. Why is that really better? Is twofold. One is the cows were meant to consume grass, not grain. Their digestive systems don't digest grain well, which is why they get sick, which is why, along with living conditions and things, depending on how they're farmed, they need to be given antibiotics. So it's this whole little, And grass, so they're meant to eat grass, and grass is a source of omega-3s. And when we switched to the majority of our, in this case, beef, being fed grain, we took away an omega-3 source in our food system that we really need. We need to be consuming omega-3s, and it became an omega-6 source. Oh my gosh, this is a whole nother category. And I'll give you the short story. So organic is a personal choice based on what you want to get through your food, because however the item, whether it's a vegetable or fruit, was grown, if it does or doesn't have pesticides, you're going to incur some of that. Same with how an animal is produced. So organic becomes a personal choice, and so does grass-fed, but they are different. Yeah. And right before you asked that question, somebody bring me back to what I was babbling about, because I lost track. What were we on just? Oh, the proteins and high quality. Thank you. Yes. So high quality meats, and I put that again. I personally feel, we all know this, that the typical American diet, which is shifting, but the typical American diet has the protein in the big centerpiece of the plate, and all these other things are peripheral. And lots of information that is scientifically backed up really supports that that's not the emphasis we should have. We should be pushing in more vegetables, more whole grains, and this should be playing a more minor role on our plate. So if you it plays a more minor role, you can have smaller quantity, higher quality. I feel personally that grass-fed is a higher quality, because we're going to be getting the product the way it was intended, and we get those omega-3s. Wild fish, when possible, again, beneficial. Omega-3s and others, yes? And yes. Okay, maybe I'll start with you, because go right ahead.
Why is organic more expensive?
Because, and if you know a local grower, you can ask them this, because the certification process is long and expensive, and because it isn't the norm, it is simply just a more expensive process to continue. So why I said you can ask a local, in the summer we have a lot of local farms. Many of them will be practicing probably a very close to organic growing practices, but they won't be able to advertise that because they haven't gone for the official certification. because it's arduous, costly, and so, but you should ask your growers, hey, what do you use, what don't you use, and learn about how things are being produced. But it's just, economies of scale. It's just the majority of our stuff still is not produced organically. Yes?
In your own personal diet, do you differentiate between red meats and non-red meats? And is there thinking behind that?
Is there thinking behind that? Is there thinking behind eating red meats or non-red meats?
Have you eliminated them? Why or why not?
I'm not a great example because my whole life I eat red meat. I've never been attracted to it. It's just something about me. So it had like as a little kid, special occasion, go out to a restaurant and I order filet mignon well done and the waiter's like, what do you, I don't know. That's just, so I'm not a great example of that. I'm sort of, I think I'm almost just a natural vegetarian, although I eat fish and chicken and a little red meat. But I think there's a lot of science behind the fact that really, I think it's this for most people. I think that if it's a good quality and it's not the major player on your plate, that then it's a perfectly healthy, good part of a diet. Yeah. So, and wild fish is much more generally a better source of the omega-3s that I probably can't talk. Do you guys know about omega-3s and omega-6s? I see some nods. I'm not going to be able to get into it tonight. I'll give you a short, and then if it's of interest, I really encourage you to go. There's, thank goodness for Google and all of and there are the Harvard School of Public Health has tons of great, reliable information, so many sources. So I would encourage you to learn more. But the nutshell is that omega-3s and omega-6s and omega-9s are something called essential fatty acids. We need them. We don't make them. We have to get them from food. So and our body needs them in kind of a 2-to-1 ratio. Omega-6s are pro-inflammatory. That's our healing process, very important. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. There are more sources naturally in our food of omega-6s and fewer of omega-3s. So it requires us to be a little more conscious about getting in those omega-3s. Dark green leafy vegetables, nuts, seeds, flax meal, cold water fish like salmon and mackerel and sardines and tuna. All fish has some omega-3s, some more than others. Grass-fed products, meats, dairy from grass-fed, those all are sources of omega-3s, and there are more. Omega-6 sources are whole grains, poultry, and a lot of vegetable oils. So because of so much processed food that's been pushed into our food system, soybean oil particularly is in a lot of stuff, and that's an omega-6 source. So between a dwindling focus on wild foods and greens and nuts as snacks, as opposed to Cheetos, excuse me, and this is a broad, I'm just sweeping over this, and combined with eating a lot more processed foods, and processed even jumps into foods prepared outside of the house because soybean oil and other omega-6 oils are used a lot. We're seeing a big imbalance in many typical American diets, way too many 6s and not enough 3s. So, and they're important. So something you could go on and learn more about and make your own decisions about, how it impacts you. Yes.
Just a quick question, as far as oils go.
Yes.
What I've understood and learned,
Yep.
olive oil and avocado oil are better for omega-3s than canola oil and that stuff? Or is
Not
that
for omega-3s.
Not better?
Yeah.
Is there any-
Weirdly, canola oil has a good source of omega-3s. What I like to say about, and actually we'll jump into fats.
Yeah.
So fats are out here on the perimeter. Again, I think fats are vital. It's what kind of fats, and again, it's a perfect example of whole foods and processed foods. So I'm also going to start throwing the salad together as I'm doing this too, because this is a great whole food source of fat, right? As opposed to the oil, which is not as good, but sometimes you need oil. I mean, you're not going to throw a piece of this in the pan and saute with it. An olive is the whole food source of fat. Olive oil is the extracted source. Not so much for omega-3s, more for the quality of the fat. And again, there's also smoking points for cooking with oils, but again, that's something you can learn more about if you don't already to go into. But more in terms of the nourishment, we need healthy fats, vital vital, vital. Looking around the room, I know many of you remember what became the well-known as the, the snack well phenomenon, right? Back when fat was the enemy, it caused all the heart disease. So take it out of everything, and what went in its place? Sugar. Yeah. And guess what's turning out to truly be our biggest problem? Sugar. So fat is not a demon. We do know through a lot of scientific research, and thank goodness it's been pulled out of almost everything, are partially hydrogenated fats. They are not good for us. But whole food fats and high quality fats are vital. We never feel satiety. We're always looking for more to eat when we don't have some healthy fat in what we're consuming. And it's just a very important part of a nourishing diet, and our whole body requires it. So I'm going to be using a whole food fat in this salad, and I'll jump back to other things. Some organic kale that I cut up before I got here. This is green curly kale. That's probably enough. All kale, same nutrient component, pardon me, but just a little different in how you might want to use it, which one you might want to choose. Kale in a salad like this really needs to, whatever dressing you use, it needs to be really massaged. You could eat it just like this if you want, but personally I think it's much nicer when it's, so I'm going to need a volunteer to help me with that. There you go, come on up. All right, so as I said, the only ingredient in this salad that is not a whole food is, I'm using tamari. This is a soy sauce, but tamari is gluten-free for anyone who has a gluten issue. Also, as a soy product, just another side note, personally, I don't eat much soy, but I always choose organic because soy is a very high pesticide crop. So that's just a personal choice, but something to be aware of. So what's your name?
Joe.
Hi, Joe. Well, you can don a pair of these lovely blue gloves. And okay, so we were talking about healthy fats. So as far as the oils, it's not as much the omega-3s. Again, not problem, but something to know and personally decide if it's an issue to you or not is many extracted oils, it's how they're extracted. So like a canola oil, for example, can be really good for certain recipes. But again, I personally would choose organic because canola is a high pesticide crop and genetically modified. Again, something you may choose to care about or not. But the extraction process, often there are a lot of chemicals like hexene and others used to extract the oils out of these seeds and things. And you're going to get some of that in your products. So that's why a good quality olive oil, a good quality avocado oil if you choose to use that, organic canola if that fits your recipe. You just want to just be smart about what you're consuming. The other thing about fats, I don't focus on calories if you haven't noticed much, but it is important to realize that an extracted oil, 1 tablespoon of olive oil is like 200 calories, and you're not getting any fiber, or you're getting some nutrients. So when you can use the whole fat, go for it. You're getting all the benefits, right? So the avocado is our healthy fat, and it's going to make our dressing. Joe's like, "Why did you get me up here so soon? I'm standing here," but isn't it fun? Yes, questions while I'm.
What about the latest trend about coconut oil?
Yeah. Coconut oil is a saturated fat, so that brings up saturated fats. I put saturated fats in that same little category, kind of, even though it's on the side. I mean, something to eat with awareness and high quality. Coconut oil, I wouldn't push it into the diet, I guess, just because it's a trend. If you want to put some on your popcorn, because that's actually what the movie theaters used to do a long time ago, before all the junk they add now. Or incorporate it into a recipe where it makes sense. But I personally wouldn't choose it over olive oil or something else. That's my personal choice. And there's all sorts of qualities of coconut oil, how it's extracted, and so on and so forth. So I think it's probably better as a beauty product, honestly, and moisturizer. But yeah, so many of the things that are kind of trending, we know this, are just that. And we're all looking, we're all looking for that magic bullet. Well, it's human nature, oh, this is it. This is going to solve all my problems. Good question on coconut oil.
I'll go with sesame oil and peanut oil.
Well, they're great in certain recipes. I mean, they're really a flavor component. Sesame oil and peanut oil. Yeah, they're not. They're fine for recipes that require them. Yeah. The other saturated fats. That was just a little end of the avocado. I got it. The other saturated fats, when it comes to saturated fat, and this is something that's, again, personal, read, decide what's best for you. I personally eat eat organic grass-fed full fat, whatever it is, butter and yogurt. I just don't have a lot of it. But, that's an individual choice. I feel as if an organic grass-fed dairy product is as close to the whole food as possible. And that's where I like to try to emphasize, I think we're all better off just with the majority of our food choices throughout a day being as close to a whole food or a whole food as possible. Not every one, not every day, but that's the goal, because if the majority of what we're eating in a day is a whole food or very close to one, we are, without following any special diet, eliminating 95% or more of all the things we should be avoiding. So it simplifies it. Now, of course, if you have any particular medical condition or issue, you have to monitor that separately, But really, it doesn't have to be a lot more complicated than that in terms of nourishing our bodies and minimizing the things that are literally depleting our energy. Sugar is on the outside there, and I agree, totally. Sugar has made its way, and when I use the word sugar, I'm not just talking about the white cane sugar that's in the box next to me. Anything that is a extracted or refined source of a sweetener. So I have something over there. You guys can try too after the salad, because you have to have your salad before your dessert. And it's a little sweet treat that's made. The sweet, though, is dates. It uses dates. So yes, it is a form of sugar, but it's a whole food source. So you have all the fiber, vitamins and minerals. The absorption up into our blood is slower, and so it's a better choice. It still doesn't mean that, because it's dates, and I'm going to have a couple times a day. But it's a nice way to use a whole food sweetener in something. But sugar is it's an anti-nutrient. That's the least of its offenses.
What about artificial sweeteners?
Oh no. All right. First of all, what range where would that fall on this little continuum of mine? Off the charts on that side. And the trick about artificial sweeteners, and even stevia, which started out, it is a plant, and then it becomes somewhat refined, but with a bitter taste. So then once it was, stevia has a funny history, if you don't know it. It was only allowed to be sold as a supplement for many years, and that was basically the power of the artificial sweetener companies. They didn't want it on the market. And then once that changed, Coca-Cola and Cargill got together and refined it further into Truvia. Okay, you're on, Joe. Come around here. And I'm going to keep throwing, I'll come back to say, I'm going to keep throwing things in, but you're going to just, if anything frustrated you today, you just take it out on that kale. I mean, really really grab it. Really grab it. I got to see a little more muscle here, Joe. Come on.
I'm a teacher.
Oh, you're a teacher. Okay, go for that. There you go. Come on. Picture those kids after the cupcakes. Go for it. More. I just realized I left one avocado out. You're going to need it. Keep squeezing. So, sugar. Where was I? Yes, stevia. So even stevia, which is technically not an artificial sweetener, the problem is that it still maintains the desire for sweet in the tongue, at the very least, even if I leave out all the impacts of chemicals and so on and so forth, of the artificial sweeteners and their impact on the body. So really, because it's so addictive, it's really the ideal thing is to just minimize our exposure to sweets in our diet so that we desensitize and get ourselves back to a normal eating pattern. The foods that are out there now, the snack processed foods, are high fat, high sodium, and high sugar. That combination is deadly. When you get to the bottom, you're doing an awesome job. When you get to the bottom of a bag of chips and you say, I have no willpower, I'm such a weak human being. No, you're not. That was produced, literally produced, to make us want to eat all of it and not be able to stop. The high fat, high sodium, and high sugar foods override our natural appetite control systems. They just override it. And we are not weak, people. We are just, being manipulated and addicted. Okay, now that's awesome. All right, I guess I'll mix up the rest. That was awesome. Those poor students. Thank you so much. So that's why really it's just reducing it. Shredded organic carrots, big time saver. Organic, so back to organic. You can make a choice as to whether that's important to you or not, but I will contend still that not all, but carrots are a perfect example. You eat a conventional carrot and then eat an organic carrot, there's a big taste difference. So, you make your choices based on what you want and what you like and what's important to you. No artificial sweeteners. And what else? But sugar is just, it pulls minerals from our bones. It affects the blood sugar level. It addicts us to, just wanting more and more and more. It's just an anti-nutrient. And if you want to, and many of you may already know this, some red onions, this guy, but there is a doctor and professor from USMC, anyway, California, I should be better at that. But his name is Dr. Robert Lustig, Lustig. He has a number of his lectures, particularly one, the most well-known, called Sugar, the Bitter Truth, on YouTube. And it to me is where the example of knowledge is power is really, you learn scientifically supported information about sugar's impact on our body on so many levels that it has helped me because, I get sugar cravings like anyone else, but I'm able to be more conscious about my choices because I know what's going on. And I also know how it makes me feel. We all know how we feel too, especially if you clean up your diet and then you go back and introduce something, you can really, really feel it. I see you nodding your head a lot. Has that happened to you? Yeah. Yeah, so that there's some great information there. And that also reminds me of something else that is important. So much of what we focus on in terms of diet, avoiding something is to avoid disease, right? And of course we want to avoid disease. But guess what? Don't you want to feel your best every day? Don't you want to just have all the energy that you deserve to have every day? I can absolutely 100% tell you that food has an enormous impact on that. So, if nothing else, that's just one of the most important reasons. Yes?
A very quick question to go back on the
Grass-fed and organic?
No.
Oh.
Is the nutrient the same if you eat it raw or if you eat it cooked? For example, putting the kale or the dandelion greens in a soup.
Right.
As opposed to having it fresh. You're getting the same nutrients?
Pretty much, yeah, it's minimal. And there's also, whether you're having the greens raw or any vegetable raw versus cooked, you can read that lycopene, which is an antioxidant from tomatoes, can somewhat be more bioavailable to us if it's cooked. It doesn't mean that a raw tomato isn't, it's just you're going to gain more. On the greens, I don't think there's a big difference. There are some vitamins that are a little better absorbed if they're consumed with some fat. But again, that's good to know. These are sesame seeds. That's good to know, but again, it gets it to the minutia, which is great if you want to go there, but you don't have to if you want to just really start to just focus on making some positive improvements in the diet. But it's a good question. And so back to this little tamari. This is a reduced sodium. And so it and the onions and the avocado make our dressing. Maybe, if I get the top off of it. There we go.
I don't know what they call it, oxalates or whatever it is.
Oh.
It's now in,
Spinach
where
and,
did that come from?
no, it's always been there. It's just
Always
been,
been
yeah. And I'm not going to be able to be oxalates. I'm not going to be eloquent in talking about it. Yeah, no, it's a naturally occurring, it's naturally occurring.
Okay, so it seems like it's nothing to worry about. It just seems like people all of a sudden are freaking out about this stuff that's in the kale and the spinach. You have to cook it.
It's actually in spinach, it's not in kale, it's in other foods. Some people have some reactions to it. I think it can have contributes to some disorder, not disease, and I know of it, but I'm not recalling the specifics.
Apparently, when I heard about it is that you can't metabolize the calcium as well in your body with the other.
The oxalates?
So whatever you call it.
Yeah. I just can't
No, it's okay.
speak,
I'm
yeah,
just
but it's
about-
naturally
I'm
occurring.
confused about it, that's all.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it was like a big deal.
Again, the more that we get into the minutia of things, the more confusing it gets. And that's, well, but that's why when it makes your brain hurt, don't compromise your wellness. You're feeling well every day because of frustration, because of all of the media and the information. A lot of well-meaning people are doing lots of research, and we get pieces of it out, and the media grabs it and says, you know how it works. So just go back to this. Keep it simple. Keep it simple and just say, hey, are most of my foods that I enjoy eating, by the way, a whole food or a processed food? And what falls in between. Please enjoy what you eat. Don't eat it because it's good for me. Ugh, that's terrible. We should enjoy the food we're eating. We should enjoy it because A, we love how it tastes, and B, we know it's nourishing us. It's a win-win. Yes?
Question, in trying to counter disease and all, how much do you wash fruits and vegetables? I noticed you dump the carrots in straight from the bag.
Well, they're organic and so yeah.
They're pre-washed?
Yeah.
Because with all the E. coli coming out, I wonder, or pesticides being on the outside of fruits that are not organic.
Yeah.
How much would it be good to wash them?
Yeah. Let's see. A couple things. E. coli you can't wash off. I mean that's a production thing, and hopefully we all remain. Food safety is very important. These were pre-washed and organic and sliced. The kale I had washed. We have a special way to wash things at the store, and then I chopped it and put it in a clean container. And food safety is very important. I'm not a crazy person when it comes to that. That's just me. But it is important to rinse things off. I mean, if it's something you're eating that you're not peeling, or then you want to wash it more thoroughly. Another little side note, too, and I could also use some help with people maybe helping me serve this out to anyone who wants to try it while we're talking about a few other things. Or if I pass some of the salad so you can try it. Organic. Do you know about the Dirty Dozen fruits and vegetables? Right, some people do, some people don't. It's a great little tool, I think is the best word, as you're choosing to either purchase organic or conventional foods, because we know organic is more expensive, so you want to be smart about where you're spending your money. So once a year, the Environmental Working Group, which is a nonprofit group, produces an updated list of the Dirty Dozen, 12 fruits and vegetables that after a number of power washings still retain the greatest amount of pesticides. So I think that's a really good thing to be aware of and use as a sorting process. So when and my daughters are all grown, they don't live with me anymore, but when I was shopping for them too, if there was an item that my family ate a lot, like apples, which is on the Dirty Dozen, I would buy them organic, because I think eating the skin is good, and and if it's something you're eating a lot of and it's on the Dirty Dozen, then it's probably a wise choice. It's still your choice, obviously. So that's just a good tool to access. Yes.
I was going to add, Consumer Reports also gives you a list every year of, if you're going to buy conventional, these are the places to buy it from. What are the safe countries to get conventional from, and what are the ones don't ever buy conventional from?
From China.
So that adds to the Dirty Dozen in terms of making
Yes, yeah, yes, yeah. And, you know, since, I mean, I should plug Whole Foods a little bit more, and not plug it, but just to educate you a little. Many people probably know this, but one of the things I love about our store is, first of all, there's over 500 ingredients that we do not allow in anything in the store. I'm amazed I still meet customers, well, not every day, probably once a week, who are shopping and don't realize that there's nothing artificial, no artificial colors, flavors, preservatives, nothing in anything in the store, along with a whole list of other things. Thank you so much. We have no added nitrates or nitrites. Nitrates and nitrites can be naturally occurring. Can't do anything about that. Mm-hmm.
Yes, but usually in cold cuts and so on.
None. Oh yeah, Europe's way ahead of us on a lot of that stuff for sure. Yes, I have the recipe for this. I have some that you can take, and I don't have enough, but there's one that if you have your phone, you can take a picture of the recipe, and then you won't lose it. By the way, the recipe is a perfect example of how I use a recipe as a jumping off place. There's quantities there, pay any attention to it. Throw some greens in, throw as many avocados to get it to a nice consistency. Put in onions, as many as you want. You know, some onions are stronger than others, so just go for what tastes good to you. That's my recommendation. So no nitrates, no nitrites, no artificial colors. When we go to the bakery, when I do store tours for kids, I love this. When I'm in the produce department, I'll point out a number of things, but one of them I'll talk about beets, and I'll say, have any of you ever cut open a beet? You know, it turns your hands red and everything, and whatever. And then we get to the bakery, and they're all like, oh, you know, and I say, well, if we don't have any artificial colors or flavors, then how do we make these pinks and greens and oranges on the decorations in our cakes? And then I remind them of the beets that make the red, and the spinach that makes the green, and turmeric that makes the reds, the oranges, and the yellows. And that's what the dyes are made from, not from chemicals. And the other thing I like, and that's what made me think of it with organic and farmed fish and things, is that we know where everything we source comes from. And that source, whether it be a fish farm or a cattle ranch or anything, they have to meet our quality standards or we don't source from them. So farmed fish is a great example because it can be sustainably sourced and responsibly farmed, where no pesticides are used to kill the weeds that are around the pond that's used, and the feed is within the quality standards, or it can be a nasty kind of thing, experience. So knowing your sources, thank you so much, is really important. Okay, let's see. What else? Breakfast. I brought the only cereals I would eat for breakfast, whether you know.
Very
Tiny.
That's not saying.
There you go.
Perfect. Really, that's it.
Okay. Thank you again. How are we doing? Yes. Eggs? I don't think there's anything wrong with eggs. I think, again, it's saturated fat. I put it in the smaller category. I wouldn't have, it shouldn't be your only breakfast. An egg, a scrambled egg, or an omelet is a great place to push in vegetables. Put those greens in there. You can, again, as far as quality, pastured eggs, again, sort of like grass-fed, they're allowing the animal to consume the diet that they were intended to do. And so their food is a result of that. So that's, again, a personal choice. But so unrefined, shredded wheat, muesli with no added sugars, the steel-cut oats that I mentioned before are great grain sources for breakfast. You can do so much with oatmeal. I think of oatmeal as just a starting point, and then I just mix in all sorts of other really good things like flax meal, blueberries, Everyone still not? I'm so sorry. I should have brought forearms. Thank you so much for your help. I used to have that when my twins were small. I gave them up, so not the twins, the extra arms. Okay. Okay.
Whoa.
Some I know. It's just
I'll make 2 of these. That's
a big helping. Well, if you don't, there is trash from both ends of the room. If you don't like it, that's fine, and you can play with it the way you would like to. Thank you. So oatmeal, when we talk about whole food and processed food, this is the way oatmeals go. I'm going to try to do this and serve at the same time. So the bottom are steel-cut oats. Okay, it's the oat groat that's literally been chopped with a steel blade. Then the next one are rolled or old-fashioned oats. So a little steam, 1 roll. So not too processed. And the top are instant or quick oats, and you can kind of visually even see how it goes, to being a little more processed. And the top are instant or quick cooking oats. Oh, it's going to be a lot again. There's no reason to ever eat these in my book, especially the ones that come in the little packages, because they have a whole lot of added other stuff, mostly sweeteners, sometimes worse. They just digest too quickly in our body, especially if we have them with anything that adds a sweet component, and we don't have anything that adds a fat component, because the fat slows down the digestion, and the sweet speeds it up. A refined grain, again, remember, is kind of like sugar in the body. So rolled or old-fashioned oats can be made in, 3 minutes in a microwave. If that isn't instant enough for you, you need to plan a little more time for your breakfast. Plus, you've all probably heard about lots of, overnight oats. You can do all sorts of things with yogurt and stuff and put it in the fridge and grab it the next day. You can also do that with steel-cut oats. They take longer to cook, but you can, at night, you can just boil 3 cups of water, 1 cup of steel oats in a pan, bring them to a boil, cover it, turn it off, go to bed. In the morning, give it a stir. Put what you don't need in the fridge for the next day. Take what you want. Add in the things that you like. Walnuts, flax meal. My latest little thing is a pat of pastured butter. That's my fat source because I just got tired of, sometimes I'll put kefir in, which is a liquid yogurt, or some yogurt. So cinnamon, great spice, yes.
Earlier you were talking about sugars. How do you see raw honey? Is that something that you would use?
Yeah, but I would use it in the same moderation I'd use anything else. Raw honey has a lot of the antimicrobial, antibacterial benefits, but that's more like if you want to use it to help heal a wound or something. There are more minerals in it, but you really look to vegetables and things for your real mineral sources. So I would say, don't increase your sugar because you think you're going to, that's not where you're getting your minerals from, even if it's a wonderful source like raw honey. Have it, enjoy it, but anything sweet in moderation. And the less you have, the less you'll crave it. It really, really happens. If you can go 5 days with absolutely as little as you possibly can sweet in your diet. And let's just say, as an example, every morning you used to have a cup of coffee with 2 teaspoons of sugar in it. And then you went back after that week and had that coffee, I absolutely guarantee you it will be too sweet for you to drink. Because you give your body a break and it desensitizes back to that normal state of taste. Same with salt. So it's really worth doing some. Read ingredients. Sugar is showing up in things. The other day, I don't know what possessed him to do this, but my husband brought home Progresso breadcrumbs, and I was just like, "What are you thinking?" And he's like, well, and he knows, but and I looked because I hadn't looked in a while, and still in Progresso breadcrumbs are high fructose corn syrup. Why? In breadcrumbs? You know why? Because it makes it taste better, so people are going to pick it over something else. It's just ridiculous. And that's a minor example of how much you're getting, but it's just sugars in everything. Everything. So please read ingredients. please read ingredients, because just that alone, you can put one thing down and pick up an alternative and cut out the sugar. Really look at what you're consuming in liquids. So much sugar comes in that form.
That concept was very addictive. That's why they put it in the foods.
Oh, yeah.
So you eat more.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can read.
Well, sugar is better than corn syrup. I mean, even though you shouldn't have too much sugar, but it's better than corn syrup.
And sugar, sugar, sugar. I mean, I wouldn't tell you to, if you're choosing one or the other, to pick the corn syrup, but, you know, sugar, sugar, sugar.
It's not good.
No, it isn't, but no sugar is good. You can read a book by Marion Nestle. It's been out for a while, Food Politics. And, you know, it's what we know, is that they work to, they, meaning, you know, the industries, work to create products that make us want to keep eating it. Anyway, so think of all the snack foods out there. You should just snack on some nuts. Throw the rest of it away. Because you could eat, 5 almonds, or 10 almonds. I'll challenge you, okay? One bag of, you know, the 100-calorie packs, there are not as many of them out there now, but they were a big thing, right? So if you ate 100 calories pack of pretzels, and you wait to see how soon it is before you're hungry, and then another day you eat 100 calories of almonds. I can't tell you how many that is. It's maybe 6. It's 11. Thank you. And with any nut, you eat them one at a time. You chew them very well and swallow them. And I'll come back to why that's important. But I guarantee those nuts are going to take you for an hour or two. And those pretzels, you'll be looking for your next snack in no time. Because there's nothing in a pretzel except refined flour and salt.
Those protein. Planters, peanuts, healthy.
Yeah, well, look what oil they cook them. If they're roasted in an oil, it depends. Plain, you know, if it's, yeah.
They're heavy. They're heavy to digest.
Yeah, well, look and see what oil they're cooked in. There are probably some that are just roasted. And then if you're not watching sodium, you know, that's the other piece. But the best nuts are the raw. Like raw is the best way to consume a nut. But if you, you know, but we're kind of used to crunchy and a little salty. So you can always mix, you know, for a while. You can mix. Oh, that's why I like walnuts, because they're always raw. But try the nut. There's so many snack foods that are just hysterical. And the reason you want to chew them really well is because nuts have a healthy fat in them. It gives your time for the message of the fat to get to your brain to say, thank you, I've had enough. And, you know, because nuts are so easy to open a bag, and we don't have to climb the tree, find the nut, bring it down, and crack it open. We have to open a bag. And so, you know, it's really easy to, and all of a sudden, you're hundreds of calories later going, whoa, I didn't need all this. So if you go a little slower, you can eat less and have nutrition, and it carry you through. I brought another little snack for you to try. You can come up when you wish. I was making this in the kitchen yesterday, and team members with me were like, are you making brownies? I'm like, no, it's not quite that exciting. But it looks like brownies, and it has a very sweet. So the only ingredients in these are little coconut walnut date balls. And that's all that's in there. 100% unsweetened cocoa, dates, walnuts, and a pinch of vanilla and a pinch of sea salt. You do need a food processor. And a little disclaimer, for some reason this batch, the walnuts didn't process quite as smooth as sometimes. But this kind of thing is another great, especially if you've kicked down your sweet tooth a little. You're welcome. Thank you for coming. It's very satisfying, and you can't overeat it because you've got the fiber from the dates, the fiber, the fat, and everything from the walnuts. So you just can't do it you can't eat as much as something that's with sugar and refined flour. And trust me, I was the brownie queen for a long time. So let me just put some gloves on. And you're welcome to try one. Take one with you. Any more questions? I know I dance around a bit, but I'm sorry. Yes.
You showed us raw turmeric and turmeric root.
Yes.
What way do we use it?
Oh, gosh. Turmeric is a wonderful anti-inflammatory vegetable. It is a root, beautiful bright color. So that's all the antioxidants. So it's very anti-inflammatory. Anti-inflammatory foods in our diet are very beneficial just for that reason. Ginger, similarly. Turmeric you'll find in lots of curries and recipes that have any curry. There's also a great thing you can Google called golden milk, which is, you can use dairy milk or a non-dairy milk. And if you do use non-dairy milks, again, please read ingredients. because a lot of them have added sugar, like original almond milk has added sugar. It has to say unsweetened. Just read the ingredients. But, so you can use either. And basically what you're using it is you grate up some fresh turmeric, some fresh ginger, a little black pepper, and a little honey. And you warm it together. It's really yummy. Very satisfying. Very, very good for you if if it's something you want. Sorry these aren't on a pretty platter. They look like this. And I brought forks, but I don't think those are going to work. I'm going to just give you the paper towels as a napkin option, and you can help yourself and take one with you if that's something you like. They're really yummy, but they're not going to taste like a Dunkin' brownie, Dunkin' Heinz brownie or whatever. Other questions?
If you take raw almonds or castor, any sort of
No.
nut,
Yep.
and you roast it yourself at home, is that changing?
Oh, thanks. Is that changing
Is
it?
that changing the nutritional
When you
value
grind
of-
it? I'm sorry, I
if you
missed.
If you just take like raw almonds,
Yeah.
and then you roast them yourself at home,
Oh, no.
it doesn't change?
No.
Okay.
No. I think it might be best if people just come up and grab them when you're leaving, if you would like to try one. I think that'll be easiest. But you just remind me, nut butters, another thing to look at the ingredients. Nut butters of any kind should just be ground nuts. Luckily, it's an area that partially hydrogenated fats have been taken out of most of them. But it's a lot of times there's still high fructose corn syrup or a lot of sugar sources, and there is salt. You can get, so I know at our store you can get a creamy or crunchy, completely nothing in there, or a little salt, or a little sugar and salt. You have choices. But again, it's something to read. It can be a very healthy thing, but not if it's loaded with sugar, let alone the other things that are being pulled out now, thank goodness.
One of the ingredients in the chocolate cake balls is
Cacao, yeah.
where would you find that?
It's cocoa powder. Just unsweetened cocoa powder. Yep. So those recipes are here. To take the salad, there's some you can take the date nut balls. You'd have to take a picture. You can take a picture of either if it's something of interest to you. My card is there. Please don't hesitate to email me if you have other questions. I do some health coaching by phone if you want to do that, and if you want a free store tour. So that's how you can reach me. Thank you very much.